Dirtle Magic! Hello and welcome back. You can follow our post on Twitter and Facebook at DirtleMTG to stay up to date on our latest videos and other posts, and you can join a more robust discussion about Casual Commander at our blog, TheDiceBag.blog. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this content to help the channel and the blog grow. Another way you can support the channel, though, is through our affiliate links in the description below. If you're looking for single sealed product or gaming accessories to protect all of that glory, please consider clicking the links in the description. Now, grab some spells, it's time to dirtle. Hello and welcome to another paper game here on Dirtle Magic. Today's game features Phenax, Adrix and Nev, Inalla, and Lynde. Ty is bringing her Phenax God of Deception deck to play. She keeps a hand of Lightning Greaves, Mind Cranked, Reality Shift, Dark Water Catacombs, Dismal Backwater, Swamp, and Reliquary Tower. Ken is playing a slightly modified Adrix and Nev Quandrix Precon, and he keeps a hand of Golden Ratio, Sequence Engine, Study Hall, 2 Islands, Spawning Kraken, or Kraken if you prefer, and Strategic Planning. Joel brings around his hybrid tribal deck headed by Inalla Archmage Ritualist, and keeps a hand of Whisper Steel Dagger, Soul Manipulation, Mountain, Open into Wonder, Swamp, Invisible Stalker, and Changeling Outcast. I'm playing Miss Frizzle, Lynde Cheerful Tormentor, and I keep a Curse of Surveillance, a Curse of Fool's Wisdom, 2 Mountains, Crypt of the Eternals, Swamp, and Curse of Disturbance. I win the die roll, and the game begins. I play a Crypt of Eternals, gaining 1 life, and pass the turn. Ty plays an island. Ken plays a forest. And Joel plays a swamp for his turn and casts his Changeling Outcast. On turn 2, I drop a mountain. Ty plays a swamp on her turn and casts Mind Crank. Ken plays an island. He then casts Coiling Oracle, revealing Novajin, Heart of Progress. It comes into play, and he passes. Joel drops an island. He then casts Invisible Stalker and passes the turn. On my turn, I drop a swamp, and then cast the Slaughter Priest of Mogus. Ty plays a Dismal Backwater, gaining 1 life. She then casts Lightning Greaves and passes her turn. Ken visits Study Hall for his land for turn. He then casts Strategic Planning, drawing 3 cards and discarding 2. Joel plays a mountain. He then casts Viserys Seer and moves to combat. He swings the Outcast at me and the Stalker at Ken. We each take 1 and each mill 1 card because of the Mind Crank. I play an island and cast my commander, Lynde Cheerful Tormentor, and I pass. Ty plays a Temple of the False God. She then casts Vantress Gargoyle and equips the Greaves to it. Moving to Ken's turn, an island enters the battlefield. Adrix and Nev then hits the field, and he passes. Moving to Joel's turn, he plays the Whisper Steel Dagger. In combat, Joel swings the Outcast and the Stalker into Ty, and she takes 2. However, because she controls the Mind Crank, she does not mill any cards. On my turn, I play a mountain. I go ahead and cast the first curse of the game, the Curse of Surveillance, putting it onto Ken. He asks why I played it on him, and I simply reply with, "You play Simic." I go to combat and swing Lynde at Joel, who takes 2. I pass. Ty finds a Reliquary Tower on her table, and the Temple of the False God becomes active. Phenax the God of Deception is then cast from the command zone. On Ken's turn, the Curse of Surveillance triggers, and each of his opponents draw 1. Ken then sees a land into play. Spawning Kraken hits the field. Luckily, it doesn't have any evasion on its own. Going to combat, Ken swings his Coiling Oracle at Joel. Joel decides not to block and takes the 1 damage. Joel's turn also sees an island into play. He then casts Merfolk Windrobber and equips his Whisper Steel Dagger to the Invisible Stalker. Moving to combat, he attacks me with the Outcast and the Stalker goes into Ken. The dagger triggers, but Joel is out of mana and I mill 1 card and Ken mills 3, and we take the same number in respective damage. To my turn, and Bojuka Bog is a card, so I play it. I exile Ken's graveyard to keep the Vantress Gargoyle from being able to attack. I then cast Mogus God of Slaughter and pass the turn. Ty taps the Gargoyle to mill me for 4 at the end of the turn in retaliation. Ty's turn sees her take 2 damage from the Mogus. Nimble Obstructionist flutters onto the field, but then poor Lynde gets her reality shifted, probably back into Miss Frizzle, and I manifest the top card of my library as a 2/2 colorless creature. Ken takes 2 damage on his upkeep, and he has to mill 2 cards. The curse triggers, I choose only for me to draw the card from it. In the first main, he casts Golden Ratio. He draws 3 cards, and then plays a Tranquil Thicket. Ken moves to attacks, and after some politics, Ken decides to swing into Ty with the spawning Kraken. She blocks with the Obstructionist, and takes no damage. Joel's turn sees a Dimir Keyrune enter the battlefield after his 2 damage from Mogus. He taps it and lands to cast Military Intelligence. Moving to attacks, the Wind Robber goes into Ken, and the Stalker goes into me. I take 3 and Ken takes 1, and we each mill the respective cards. At the end of turn, Ty taps the Gargoyle to mill Ken for 4 more cards. I play my own Temple of the False God on my turn. I cast Pilgrim's Eye and get an island from my deck. I follow it by casting the Curse of Disturbance on Ty, and I pass afterward. Ty's turn starts with 2 damage from Mogus. She moves straight to combat and swings the now able to attack Vantress Gargoyle into Ken, who takes 5 and mills 5 cards. In the second main, a Ravenous Chupacabra enters the battlefield and eats up Ken's spawning Kraken. On Ken's upkeep, I let everyone else draw a card off of the curse, and he also takes 2 damage from Mogus. In the main phase, he casts Body of Research, making 2 68/68s. That's pretty big. Luckily, they also don't have evasion yet. Joel's turn sees a Swamp into play, and 2 damage to him off Mogus. He goes straight to combat, swinging the Wind Robber and the Stalker into Ken, and drawing 1 card from Military Intelligence. Whisper Sealed Dagger also triggers, and Joel casts Essex from Ken's graveyard. I play an island on my turn, and then recast Lynde from the command zone. Going to attacks, I swing the Eye at Ty, and create a zombie token because of the Curse of Disturbance. I pass my turn. Ty takes 2 damage during her upkeep for the Mogus trigger. In the main phase, she casts Jace's Mindseeker, having Ken mill 5 more cards. Phenax now has the devotion to be active on the battlefield. Mindseeker allows Ty to cast Rapid Hybridization from Ken's graveyard, destroying one of the large fractal tokens, and he creates 2 3/3 frog lizards thanks to his commander. Moving to attacks, the Gargoyle swings into me, hitting me for 5, and I mill 5. To Ken's turn, and he sacrifices a frog lizard token to the Mogus trigger. I forget my curse trigger though, and no one else gets to draw cards. He casts Sequence Engine, and passes. Joel takes 2 damage to start his turn. Una, Queen of the Fae, enters the battlefield, and Joel remembers he has Eminence in his command zone. We spend some time discussing how it would work with Essex's replacement effect, and after the table comes to an agreement on how it would go down, Joel proceeds to make a token of not quite Una. Politics are had about which creature Joel should pick, and he eventually picks the Chupacabra. We believe this is able to be done because while Eminence would make a token of the creature that came into play, Essex replaces it with any creature on the battlefield. Ken has a response though in Crafty Cutburst, and Ken creates 2 Chupacabra instead of Joel getting any at all. With those ETBs, Una hits the bin, and Essex is sacrificed in response to the other Chupacabra's effect to the Viscera Seer. Moving to combat, the Stalker goes into Ken, and the Outcast into me. With the damage comes the mill, and I'm very fine with seeing Cassetto go into Ken's graveyard. During my first main phase, I turn my Manifest creature face up, and it's a Thoughrender Lamia. I then cast Estrid's Invocation, copying the Lamia, and they both trigger. Notably, Ty discards Flood of Tears off these triggers, and I'm thrilled to see the board wipe go away, for now anyway. I swing the Pilgrim's Eye into Ken, and he takes 1 and mills 1. At the end of my turn, Ty taps her creatures to mill me for 11 cards. Mogus is also active. Moving to Ty's turn, she takes 2 from the Mogus. Then she casts Night Howler, bestowing it onto the Jace's Mindseeker. It becomes a 25/25. She goes to attacks and swings Phenax, Chupacabra, and the Gargoyle into me. I block Phenax with Mogus and the Chupacabra with Lynde. I take 5 and mill 5. Jace's Mindseeker ends the turn as a 26/26, and she passes. Ken's turn, I forget the curse trigger again, and he takes 2 damage from Mogus. In his main phase, he sees Aran Wreath of Vastwood come into play. He then casts Curiosity Crafter to have some flying defense. He then activates Sequence Engine to make 2 4/4 fractals by exiling the Quandrix Cultivator from his graveyard and passes the turn. Joel starts his turn with a mountain, and by asking what creatures are in graveyards. He makes a choice and goes to attacks. Invisible Stalker hits me for 3, and I mill 3, and he takes my Clever Impersonator. He casts it while I move the Ad Hoc Sunblocker. It comes into play as a copy of Night Howler as an aura, and he enchants the Stalker. I play Mountain on my turn. I cast Read the Runes, where X equals 2. I discard a card and sacrifice a permanent I control, which is the Curse of Surveillance. I then cast Claws of Gix. Moving to attacks, I swing the Pilgrim's Eye into Joel and Lynde into Ty. Neither block and damage is good, with Ty taking 2 and Joel taking 1, while also milling the card. In the second main, I cast Perilous Research, drawing 2 cards and sacrificing the Pilgrim's Eye. I then cast Arcane Signet. I pass, and the Curse of Surveillance comes into play attached to me from my graveyard. Ty responds by tapping the Mindseeker and milling Joel for 29 cards. Ty's turn has her casting Mystic Remora and taking 2 more damage from Mogis. She moves to combat and swings the Mindseeker at Joel, dealing 35 damage and knocking him out of the game. Moving to Ken, the upkeep sees him sacrificing the Coiling Oracle, playing a Forest, and passing the turn. I come to my turn and move my Curse of Surveillance onto Ty with Lindy's trigger. I draw 2 cards from Lindy's trigger otherwise and a card for my turn. I play a Swamp and cast Curse of Fool's Wisdom on Ty as well, and because an enchantment came into play, each of my opponents can discard up to 2 cards thanks to the Lamia. I then cast Rakdos Charm to exile Ken's graveyard, shrinking the Mindseeker's size. My Solemn Simulacrum hits the field, and I grab a mountain into play tapped. At the end of the turn, Ty mills me for 11 more cards. Ty begins her turn by losing 2 life and taking 2 damage, paying 1 for the Remora cumulative upkeep trigger, and no cards from the curse are drawn, and I gain 2 life. She then casts a Deadeye Navigator, but doesn't bond it to anything currently. She goes to attacks, hits me for 15, and I mill 15. Deck is getting a bit thin. Ken's turn sees him sacrifice a token. He then casts Primal Empathy. Afterward, Ken passes the turn with no attacks. A mountain enters the battlefield on my turn, and then I cast a Geist Wave, bouncing the Night Howler aura back to Ty's hand to further lower the power of the Mindseeker. I go to attacks and swing Mogis and Lynde at Ken, and my Lamias, Slaughter Priest, and Zombies at Ty. Ty blocks with her Navigator and Phenax against the Lamias, and Ken blocks with his 2 4/4 Fractals against Mogis and Lynde. In response to blocks, I sacrifice the block creatures to the Claws of Gix except for Mogis. In the second main phase, I sacrifice the Slaughter Priest, my 2 Zombies, Arcane Signet, and Sad Robot to the Claws as well, which draws me a card. I cast Dronic Resonator, and follow that up with a Blasphemous Act. The board gets wiped except for the large fractal token, Phenax, and Mogis, and I end the turn at 19 life. Ty's turn starts with her drawing a card for the missed trigger on the Blasphemous Act, and then she lets the enchantment go to the graveyard. She loses 4 life, I gain 4 life, and she takes 2 damage otherwise. She casts a Riddle Keeper, and it comes into play. Night Howler comes back into play as a 23/23 and is not bestowed. Lightning Greaves is then equipped to the Night Howler, and it's tapped to mill Ken for 23 cards. Night Howler grows to be a 31/31. Ken's upkeep has him take 4 damage to preserve his token after I copy Mogis' trigger with the Dronic Resonator. He also mills 4 cards, and Night Howler grows again. In his main phase he casts Zimoni, Quandrix Prodigy. He activates a Ronreef the Vastwood, putting a 1/1 counter on Zimoni. He recasts his commander and moves to attacks. He swings his Giant Fractal at Ty and gains a zombie token. Ty blocks with Riddle Keeper, which dies, and Ken mills 2 cards. My turn comes back around, and I play a Swamp. I recast my commander, and then use Claws of Gix to sacrifice my Curse of Fool's Wisdom, but unfortunately I mess up the timing and forget that it comes back at the end of turn, which ruins my plans to make Mogis active so it can attack. I cast the On Flavor Emissary of Grudges and secretly choose an opponent. Going to combat, I swing the Hasty Emissary at Ty for 6, and she goes down to 4. Ken scries in response using the Study Hall. I pass and the Curse of Fool's Wisdom comes back to me from my graveyard under my control attached to me. Mogis is now active. Ty's turn begins with her taking 2 damage from the Mogis trigger, and I have no one draw cards off the blue curse. Ty taps the Night Howler and mills Ken for the rest of his library, and she passes the turn. Ken moves to his turn and loses the game because of Primal Empathy's trigger, and he can't draw any cards from his empty library. Moving to my own turn, I draw a card and technically lose 2 life and gain 2 life. I cast a Nevinral's Disc, and I go to attacks, swinging Lynde and Mogis at Ty. She can't block and goes down. I win the game with 6 cards left in my library. Alright, let's review. Ty's Phenax deck was only decently scary this game, but was enough to keep people on their toes. Luckily, she didn't get some of the higher toughness creatures in the deck to really start the mill train, much less a Duskmantle Guildmage. Ken's deck is slightly modified Quandrix Quandary Precon, so it still lacks some of the things like Recursion, which might have helped him this game. Him taking the tokens from Joel when he was trying to make them himself was a pretty sweet play though, and turned the tables on him. Joel for this game was playing a combined Rogues and Wizards deck. He did a lot of work, but his damage unfortunately never seemed to increase, and the one time it would have threatened to do so, Ken nuked his creatures out of existence. Still, with Changelings making the bridge between the two tribes, and a number of enchantments in there that just didn't hit to make them all the same creature type, it's really too bad we didn't get to see more from it. Lynde is one of my favorite hipster commanders from the last year, though I clearly need to practice the deck more. For only the third time I've played the deck, I think it did fairly well, even with some things to tighten up and kinda tune. Everyone else wanted me to say at the end of this, though, that the field trip with Miss Frizzle wasn't fun at all, and they're moving schools. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, check out my other videos featuring other commanders and commander gameplay. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know when new videos are up. Also, please share this video with anyone you might think would be interested in this content. Until next time, stay safe out there.